Thanks for taking the time to check out today's podcast. Today we've got Jeremy Barker on, and he loves disruption. His favorite thing on the planet is to discuss and create new ideas, and his next favorite thing is to kill the idea as fast as he can. He is the CEO, founder of Murphy Door, and he's also started 4 other businesses, 5 if you include Murphy Door, 5 businesses that have that do 8 figures or more of revenue, and his favorite business that he ends up sharing in the podcast, and he talks a lot about what he wants to do with this company over the next 5-10 years. It's approaching $100 million in annual revenue, and his mindset on work-life balance is a very interesting one. It was kind of enlightening to me, just a little bit different of what you hear from me when it comes to work-life balance, but really I loved the entire conversation with Jeremy, and I hope you guys like this podcast as well. Yeah, man. Jeremy, thanks for joining the show today. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you very much for having me, man. I'm excited.
So Joel, who helps us rock and roll with this podcast, he wanted to bring you on. I didn't know who you were, and doing a little bit of research, it's really intriguing. Just your mindset, the way you go about life, and you're the creator of Murphy Door, man, which I had to look up. And obviously, when I look it up, obviously I knew what it is, but living in my little cocoon here, I didn't realize just by seeing the name Murphy Door. And so once I looked up, I'm like, oh my God, this is the guy that created that brand, right?
Yeah, so, that's it. Kind of fun, huh? A little bit of a ride.
For those of you that maybe like me don't know what Murphy Door is, well, Jeremy, what's Murphy Door? I guess you're a good person to ask.
Well, anything you can create in a doorway. So the idea there initially when we started Murphy Door was to create panic rooms, because we thought that would be really fun and a kind of a sexy thing to put in every house, is like gun rooms and some hidden space that nobody wants you to know about. But as we've kind of matured, we decided that we could create usable functional space in every single wall space, especially doorways where you have a multifunctional usable product rather than just a door keeping you from seeing me change. Now I can create up to 20 cubic feet of storage in that normal single door, or 40 cubic feet of storage in a double door. That's the boring side, but we also make pivoting walls and, all the cool stuff that people want to talk about. Big things are speakeasies and humidors and red rooms, like you name it. That's our role.
So on your LinkedIn, you talk about how you love disruption, and your favorite thing on the planet is to discuss and create new ideas. Then your next favorite thing is to kill the idea as fast as you can. So when you started Murphy Door, about 13 years ago, is that how did you? What was the dialogue inside your brain? What did that sound like?
So when I was 18 years old, I created a shed company that. A wooden shed company. You wouldn't think that disruptive, but every shed had a wooden frame on the inside to hold the door together and kind of keep it structural. So we created the metal frame that every shed door has today. That was my first patent when I was 18. And got into Home Depot at almost 19, roughly, and supplied the Home Depots nationwide before I hit 20. Kind of a ride, made a ton of money by the time I was 22. So I understand how to navigate the big box world from an early age. I fumbled that really big, by the way, and landed on my face at 22, lived in my car for a year, made 8 figures, made almost $20 million at 21 years old, 22, just before I turned 22. And fumbled that. I just learned how to party really well. So after not knowing how to manage money, because I didn't have really any form of education on business or anything, just found the right product that we were able to crush and went crazy. When it came to the Murphy Door side, I'd fallen back into fire. I'd redirected my life, became a firefighter paramedic here in Weber County, Utah for Roy City. And then from there, last week I had a bad throat, lost my voice. So
it's all good.
Needless to say, I thought, well, what's a good thing that I could create that could keep me in the fire world, something I'm passionate about. I love being a paramedic. I love being a firefighter, that I could get back into big box and maybe have somebody else manufacture that I could kind of like third party distribute, And I, at the time, was building a theater room. And when I say theater room, this is a firefighter level theater room. So this is like 4 folding chairs on a 2x6 stage to try to make my kids have something cool in their house while all the neighbors in the big houses had their real theater rooms. But I wanted a quasi one that would fit my budget. And I thought if I could do anything cool, it would be making a doorway that looked like a ticket booth or something to go into the theater room. So I built this like little hexagon style. Remember the old, what was it? fortune teller. And I thought maybe like that had the little glass thing and you'd put it in and it'd roll your fortune kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like you pay a quarter or whatever. And I thought, well, I could do that and they could open the back door and then give their friend a ticket and then the door would open or the ticket booth would open and take them into their theater room. So that was the principle. And I thought, well, wait a second. As I got online, looking through Pinterest, this is 2012, internet wasn't quite as robust. Facebook was barely happening. MySpace, I think, was the thing. And couldn't find much. So I thought, you know what, this is interesting. If I'm looking for it, especially at my firefighter level, what are the rich people looking for? And what could this potentially do to, big box? Could I create something that gets into Home Depot, Lowe's, and those kind of processes where I can still do it? I've never built a cabinet before at the time, right? So I've done framing and I've done general construction, but never like finish level cabinetry. So that was way outside of my expertise in any way. And as I dug into it further, I'm like, man, what does that market share look like? And of course, every time someone does a pitch to me to buy their business, it's infinite and there's trillions of dollars available for me to grab, but it's not real. So I did the same thing, got really super rich on Excel. And I thought, this is a huge market. I just add more zeros. It's crazy. You just like, what if I did 10% of the US
It's fun to do that.
Right. So I was a trillionaire, believe it or not, by like 2015 is in my math. I like 3 years, I should have $1 trillion. But anyway, I ran it through and I started going, wait a second, how do I build it? We started doing some test models, used regular hinges, like side-mounted hinges that you use on a normal door, and that ripped apart. And then I tried a piano hinge and that ripped apart. And we found the fail points were basically the top and bottom, and then the fixed shelf in the middle. The screws were just too small to hold all that weight. Man, I'm sorry about my voice.
You're fine.
And I took a lozenge thinking it would help. Maybe I'm take that lozenge out. It's not working. And so we ended up creating a hinge that mounted the top and bottom. And I thought, you know what? This is my key into big box. I'll create the hardware set and then I can ship it and sell it to the store as a hinge. Then everybody could build their own hidden door. But there wasn't even a category.
Right.
It didn't even exist, like a hidden door hardware set or a hidden door. So that was kind of the concept evolving into Murphy Door, was just my theater door, trying to find out what that marketplace could potentially look like, and saw that there was huge potential, right?
So did you initially pitch that hinge? Or did you and they just said this is like too niche and like no one's going to go?
Yeah, never.
So then what was your next step from that? I mean, this is coming out of, you thought you kind of figured out big box store, you were successful once. What, after that was kind of rejected, what was that next step? There's some people that would probably quit.
Yeah, I don't have quit. That's probably my biggest downfall in my life. In some ways, and in other ways, it's gotten me through everything, right? Living in my car was awesome. But needless to say, I decided, well, you know what? These guys are wrong. Obviously, they're big box. They're thread counting, they count their threads on their T-shirts and pants more than they know about hardware anymore. So I'm like, I'll build the whole product category. I'm going to prove to them that all of us are struggling for this opportunity to turn our closets into something, or we want something creative that would be in your house, some talking point, a theater door, a pantry door, or something, a cool little hidden room for your kids to play with under the stairs. Like, I think there's a space here, and there's how many homes, and average home has 26 doors. Like, if I just got one of those in every house, that would be interesting. So I went ahead and prototyped this, and I want you to keep in mind I'm making like $762 every 2 weeks take home from the fire department. So it's not like I had a lot of extra money to run with. So after that, I got a little investor. He fronted up $24,000, my neighbor in Morgan County, and he said, look, prove it wrong. This guy had a ton of money. He had a lot of belief in me and my previous experiences, and he says, just go see it. So I developed a hinge that would carry like 1,100 pounds, ball bearings, really smooth. The action, the heavier it loaded, it moved well. We built a simple, practice door, and I'm like, man, that really works. This hardware can do in-swing, out-swing, left hand, right hand. It does everything with one simple hardware set. The downfall is the hinge was $150, and most hinges are $3 a piece. So I thought, well, for the prospect of what it could be, it's important. I think it'll work. Then the next thing I convinced my investor within that $24,000 is to let me go to the International Builder Show. and see what that would look like. And needless to say, I'd got a little 10 by 10 booth, one functional door, and a bunch of trifolds. And I opened and closed the doors, and I had a ton of attention, and everybody wanted a door. Unfortunately, Home Depot, Lowe's, and all those ones like, oh, dude, I want one for my house. I'm like, oh, I'm not trying to sell to you. I want to sell it to the store. And they're like, dude, you have like a door, and you and your wife are opening the door. Like, I don't think you could supply Home Depot. Like, well, you're wrong, but okay. And after a minute, we thought, hey, we're onto something. We ended up getting a few sales. The most important thing that happened there was a lady named Susan Lee from Discovery Networks had come in, and she said, hey, I love this store. We need you to advertise. I think you'd do well. I'm like, lady, I don't have any money. Like, your ad spend would cost me more than my annual earnings at the fire station. So she goes, oh, you're a firefighter. She goes, I love you. I'm going to take care of you. Well, she ended up filming me a DIY I Want That piece from the International Builders Show at no charge.
Wow.
And then she ended up spinning it, and literally when the day that ran, I owed $9,000 to American Express, and they were about to shut off my account the next day. And they ran that night, and I ended up getting a few website sales. And when I say website sales, the irony that somebody, and pardon those first customers, were so stupid to buy off that shoddy website with a bunch of like CGI or edited pictures that made bookshelves looks like doorways. Bless their hearts, because they helped us get here. But
They say you took care of them, right?
yeah, and unfortunately, the first 1,000 customers, I had to rebuild their doors. I don't know, at least once or twice as we did
the first 1,000.
Yeah, roughly. I think we had to warranty roughly 1,000 of those units.
Yeah.
There's a big, huge learning curve. Even though they look like a kitchen cabinet, there's a lot of process I skipped over, by the way. We didn't know how to build it, so we found another cabinet company in Idaho, Merrill Cabinets, to help us design the actual bookcase functioning door systems that we wanted to create. And then we just put our hardware on it. But the difference is this isn't a cabinet. And what we learned through the process is we're trying to carry 350 pounds on this 8 to 12 inch deep box and have it get slammed and kicked and moved and hang forever, that it doesn't stay together like a cabinet that's mounted to a wall and a floor. And so you hear a lot of people building hidden doors right now, and they're like, oh man, they're pieces of junk, they fall apart. And the unfortunate part about owning the brand Murphy door is that everybody has a Murphy door, or they're having their cabinet guy build a Murphy door. I'm like, well, they're building a bookcase door, but they can't build a Murphy door because that's our registered trademark and our copyrights and our patents and all the things that go with it. However, they fall apart quite easy. And now we have, structural engineers, mechanical engineers, manufacturing engineers, design engineers that all work in-house. So our ability to carry the weight and stay structurally sound for the life of the product is way different than what it used to be. So as we've improved our, development and manufacturing process for the actual bookcase, the ones that were early, I guess, buyers, we've had to repair those, and we continually do. That's a good thing, for us.
Awesome.
If there's a problem on those early ones, we take care of you forever.
Yeah. Going back to what you said before about you were 20 or 21 years old and making a couple, 20 million bucks or so. What were the biggest faltering steps that kind of led you backwards for a little while there?
Oh, that's pretty easy. Let's go cigarettes, alcohol, and girls. Right.
So
wouldn't that be pretty easy? Maybe a little gambling.
So do you think, do you think, in your opinion, did you have to work really hard for that first 20, or did you end up kind of getting a little bit of luck in there too, and right place, right time, and then it happened, and then the hard work went away after that? Or
No, I was a hustler always. So my initial concept, I was going to school. I got out of high school, thought I'd be a firefighter, got my EMT in high school, did that, found out they only made $6.13 an hour, went and got a job, lumping freight, $7, $7.50 an hour. And then I did construction, making a little more money, which are kind of golden handcuffs. You make a little bit more money than most, and it's hard to leave that job. And then I decided I didn't want to do blue collar work, went back to the U, and then my neighbor asked to build him a storage shed. So Tough Shed at the time only had like 3 locations, Utah, Idaho, and Nevada, I believe. And I thought they were only in Utah. So when my neighbor asked me to build him a shed, I ran down to Tough Shed in Salt Lake and kind of copied the design layout of what they're doing. I mean, it's just a framed box with wood sheeting and some shingles. But I noticed every single one of their doors were twisted open at the top. And so they were using 2x4s on the inside of like the actual sheeting that they use for a plywood door. to kind of give it some structural integrity. And if a 2x4 is not mounted to a top plate and a bottom plate, it has a tendency to twist. So I'm like, look, that's a pretty dumb design. If we just did it out of tube steel and bolted that on or screwed it on, then it wouldn't sag or it wouldn't twist like that, because steel's not going to do what 2x4s do. And I thought, well, it worked really well. And a bunch of neighbors around the neighborhood, when I say a bunch, maybe 3 or 4, asked me to build them sheds. And I was making like $1,500 a week doing sheds. And this is 93, right? 94. And I'm like, man, this is pretty good money. I don't need a side job when I could do this, go to college and do this as the side gig. And I thought, my mom always hustled trade shows, selling whatever at, the state fair and all these different little events. And I thought, if I put these sheds up at a state fair, let's see how they would do. And so I went down to the state fair and we sold $66,000 worth of sheds in 10 days. And I'm like, oh, dang, I'm rich, bro. I don't even need to go to college, because I was going to college to make 60 grand a year. And I did that in 10 days. Of course, I didn't remember that you have cost of goods sold and they actually build the product, and then you have that. So, of course, being a brilliant business guy, I decided to go buy a brand spanking new Dodge Ram that had even an adjusted market value there, because they were very few. The new Ram diesels were. So I bought a $35,000 truck. Now, I did finance that at the highest level interest possible, because I was 18 or 19, because I thought that would be smart too. And we went through the whole thing, and it kind of got its own legs. And Home Depot happened to be in the store. The regional buyers, back in the day, they had 6 merchant regions, like Southwest, Northwest, and so on. And he's like, what are you doing with all our T111, bro? You're like buying everything up. What do you do? And I said, I did sheds. And at the time, they were selling sheds on the wall. They were handy home builders, like just the facade of the storage shed. They had a house shape and a barn shape, and they'd hang them mid-level on the wall in the lawn and garden department. And then you'd go buy the kit from Handy Home Builder and go home and build your 2x2 shed, 2x2 framing shed. And I said, well, ours is different. We have a metal frame door, and we're doing 2x4s. Ended up negotiating it out. He's like, yeah, dude, you need to supply our sheds. And I'm like, oh, all right. So we hustled them up a little bit. They gave me a purchase order. They sent me this banker's box full of these giant documents. And I'm like, who the hell do these guys think they are? They're buying from me. I'm not their customer. I don't know why I have to fill out all this paperwork. And anyhow, I got cited for contracting without a license, manufacturing in a residential neighborhood, no insurance. I learned a bunch of stuff along the way. And Home Depot, we were able to convince them that you don't show our sheds on the wall because they have a metal frame and you can't open it. And so we were able to be the ones that convinced them to put the sheds outside in the lawn and garden department, which now everywhere you go today, the sheds are outside. And that was because me at 18 had no money to do the sheds hanging on the wall. So I was able to convince them the best way to display sheds is in the lawn and garden department. And then I did PKs, product knowledge things. When we delivered the sheds, we could teach customers how they get installed at their house. We drop them off. They got to choose from an actual functioning shed. So never limit yourself. Like if you're 18 years old and you don't think you can change big boxes' minds, you can. You just have to be creative. And mine came from an angle of I have no money to buy all those stores' displays to hang on their wall. So this way I was able to get purchase orders for the displays being delivered versus me paying for all those displays being hung on a wall. Cash flow, right? And I didn't have the capital. My parents were broke. My parents had just got divorced. Mom was a hairdresser and hustled little products. So I never have had anybody really to lean on outside of the 24,000 from John in anything we've ever done.
Most successful people I know, they're fairly habitual. They've got their discipline. And so how long, my guess is, through that success with Home Depot and the early success you had on your way to that first $20 million by the time you're 21, 22 years old, you were probably habitual and very disciplined. How long did it take you to stray away from the habits that you had and the discipline you had to then basically lose it all?
Well, it isn't even as much habits. The full story is I had a Vegas plant, I had a Utah plant, I had a Phoenix plant. And I was 21, 22 years old at the time. And I'm like, dude, I'd like to date. I'd like to be doing more than just work all the time. And I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to franchise the Phoenix model or the Phoenix operation. I didn't know about franchise law. I didn't know you had to have all this stuff. So I just put up my Phoenix plant for sale, thinking they could take over the Phoenix, Arizona market. I could keep the rest of the other markets that I was operating in. And I had a guy buy the Phoenix plant. He came in. We sold it for $2.2 million, I believe, or $2 million and change. And he put $20,000 down. We did all the documents, and we were waiting for his wife to sign. In the meantime, he convinced Home Depot to send all my receivables to him, all of them. So he drained all the receivables that they had it was like 30 to 60 days. And I was still waiting for the signature and the rest of my money, but I was pretty trusting. He used kind of a church title, I'm from Utah. And so he was a stake president. And I'm like, oh, you're supposed to always trust the stake presidents, and he's not going to take advantage of me. And he sure did. He liquidated everything. I could have gone the easy way and just gone to Zion's Bank and said, hey, man, this guy opened an account called Old Frontier Shed, and my business was Frontier Shed. And they cashed the check, or they deposited the check. And I knew that right when he received it, because Depot's like, we sent your check to this Ogden address. And I'm like, whoa, wait, that's not my check. That's not my address. And I could have immediately gone and just said, hey, wrong account. That's not made out to that account. You need to put it in my account. But instead, in my infinite wisdom at 22 years old, I thought I'd get a hold of an attorney to see what other methods there are, because now I want to sue him for damages. There was the false pretense, and attorneys convinced me that I could sue for these damages and make a ton of money. So I waited for 15 months, and I paid him, tens of thousands of dollars a month. It drained my checking account dry. And 15 months later, nobody was selling me wood anymore because I couldn't pay him. And so, when you're young and you're getting these pressure phone calls from debt collectors like Boise Cascade and lumber mills, and they're saying, you need to owe me money, instead of taking the bullet head on and just say, hey, man, I just don't have it. This is what happened. Kind of just stuck my head in the sand, drank more, partied more, and just kind of ignored all the pressure points. So there was more than just the lack of discipline that led there. I made it sound that way when I said, cigarettes, alcohol, and girls, but truly it was kind of, that's what led into it. And my lack of ability to understand how to handle conflictual or difficult conversations when you have bad news to tell someone. And, now we don't have that. If I have bad news to tell you, man, I'm on the phone with you and I'm saying, this is the problem, this is what's going to happen. And you'll hear from me 2 times a week, or my team, to let you know the progress of that, if that occurs. Fortunately, it hasn't been that way for a while, but when we first started up Murphy Door, there was those difficult cash flow times, but we just stayed in early communication and called first before they had to call us.
What's the biggest difference in the people that make it in business and the people that don't make it in business?
So this is a kind of a mantra I use a lot. Everybody has these amazing dreams, and thank goodness we do. Like, we dream a lot, and we can see ourselves in these beautiful places, and then we all feel like we have pretty good motivation. So I would say 100% of us have a dream of some sort, and I would say a high percentage of people have the motivation to do it. But I would say very few percentage of the people have the discipline to execute the dream. And they also have all the excuses of why they can't. And I hear a lot of I'm gonna stories from people like, hey, this is what I'm gonna do. And I call them assholes, right? A lot of people that come and ask all these questions and they never execute on
that a ton, yeah.
the answer. And it's like, dude, you really have every opportunity to do it. You're just afraid of failure. And I think what keeps people from really being able to perform, and by the way, Murphy Door is my 5th 8-figure business, and it'll break 9 figures in the next 18 months. But it's just, this is like 5 times that we've been able to execute 8 figures. And it's not, and I say that simply because I don't have anything special. I don't have a college degree. I don't have parents that have handed me any money. And I know you hear this story a lot. And I truly don't think I'm that super smart. However, because I don't have all those secret ingredients as like diplomas and contacts from the Ivy League schools that they went to, I just had to get down into the grit, and I get really, really comfortable in just knowing I can outwork anyone around me, hands down. And if it's not that I can do it right the first time, every time, I know that I can do it so many times that eventually I'll get it right.
I think there's a lot of people, you use the word execute in there. A lot of people don't want to execute and go have the follow through and, execute the plan, execute it within the business. Yeah. Well, but also I think maybe it's just me, but when I look at other people and if I use that word execute, or if they say it back to me, I almost wonder if they don't necessarily know what execution truly is or truly looks like. So when you say execution or, execute, what does that look like every single day for you over the last 20, 30 years?
Yeah. So I didn't really understand, like, in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And by the way, everybody, I don't read a lot. I Audible. So when I use these books, don't think I'm some brainiac. I just have to do
I
something
told
while
this
I'm
on a
flying.
podcast a while back. I can't even get through that book.
It's so hard. Yeah. And it's funny because
It's
Stephen R.
bad,
Covey was one of our neighbors, and he'd come to the house, and he worked with my mother a lot. And that's true. I mean, I'm right here in Utah, right? And so anyhow, he had one section that was called, what was it? I just lost my train of thought. Begin with the end in mind. And when I was a kid, I thought that has to be the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, how can you begin with the end in mind when you don't even know what you're doing, right? You don't even have an idea of what this business is supposed to look like. So how do you design your end objective? So over the last couple of years, I've had an opportunity to kind of have a pivotal mind shift where I thought, you know what, the end in mind could simply be, what does my personal life need to look like in 10 years? What does my professional life look like in 10 years? And what does my financial life look like in 10 years? Or whatever that date looks like, at least defining the objective. Kind of like when you tell your guys, hey, we're really busy, let's go outside and run and get it done. And then instead of defining what your objective is for that day or that week and letting them know what that looks like. So if we're going from Salt Lake to LA, I can tell them to jump on I-15 southbound, and you're going to get gas at exit 325, exit 250, you're going to grab some dinner, you're sleeping at exit 165. Highly detailed accountability benchmarks a long way to your goal. And so I've kind of changed my mindset on begin with the end in mind. To answer your question, however, I would say that what does execute look like? Knowing where my end objective looks like, and then breaking it up to annual, quarterly, monthly, weekly, and daily targets, and having a clear definition of what today's supposed to look like and what my mission is to show what I would call success for the day. And then, I met with Designs Bank, and they get frustrated because I report these things daily. We get these numbers from everyone every day. I measured that towards goal on my annualized basis off a daily input. He's like, dude, you're going to drive yourself crazy doing this every day. I'm like, well, look, here's the problem. If I miss my day, it's hard to catch my week. If I miss my week, I won't get my month. And if I don't get a month, it's really hard to get my year. So steering every day helps me achieve my weekly target, which then also helps me achieve my monthly target. And if I can get those 3 things, it's going to be much easier to get my annual target. Any of those getting out kilter for any amount of time is really hard to fix in business. I mean, you have maximum throughput capacity in manufacturing, and actually even in labor, you have a maximum amount of hour times that you can put in a day. You got 24 hours if you're willing to work it, but you don't have 25. So I just do it that way. Like, executing comes down to task orientation on a daily basis on what my day's supposed to look like to achieve my week, to achieve my month, to achieve my year, and then put me in my end state. And I try to keep my end states in like 3, 5, and 10-year objectives.
That's awesome stuff. So going back to, I think that's really hard though for some people to decide what they want on the end to be able to work back into some of that stuff too.
You know what's ironic is I've changed my interview process a lot. So we just interviewed I never had a salesman for Murphy Door, by the way, until like June of last year. And then we hired our first team in August. We've never had sales reps. It's always been really organic, D2C, social media driven, and television driven, and movie driven, right? We've been fortunate in all the movies and TVs, and that really has helped us grow. But we've had to learn how to build these sales teams. And I really don't. I'm really not a normal interview guy, and I'm not a normal hire guy. I could care less about Ivy League schools. I probably won't hire you if they have that, just because it's not really our culture. And I'd probably get a lot of hate for that, but that's okay. At the end of the day, I sit down and I'm like, hey, we sit down in the whole group. All interviewees are at the table together. I'm like, I'm going to go through, I want to know what your personal, professional, and financial goals are for you and where you see yourselves in 10 years. So I have them draw their vision of where they live, what size property they have, what kind of cars in the driveway, how many kids are in the house, do they have a dog, where do they vacation, how do they vacation, what do they do for work, what does it look like, how much are they making, are they in something they love? I have them really color that out. And then I say, how much is in savings, how much is in stock, do you own a company, do you own assets that are paying you passive income? Paint me that picture. And what's crazy is most people I've done that with have never done that exercise. Mm-hmm. And so at the end, as you reel them back in and they're like, why do you want to know that? I'm like, look, this won't keep you from anything. All I need to do is make sure we're in alignment as a company to help you achieve where you want to be in 10 years personally, where you want to be professionally, and where you want to be financially. It's not a yes or no. You can want to live in a trailer on half acre in the middle of Missouri. I don't really care. But let's see if what you want and what your I guess, desire and effort level is, and see how they correlate. So, for example, the next question after that, by the way, the loaded question is, what does your work-life balance look like? So, a lot of people use that on like this plank theory. It's like 8 hours of work, 8 hours of home, and 8 hours of sleep. And I kind of have a different viewpoint of work-life balance. I don't measure it on a daily 888. I measure it on a life. So I'm like, look, if I'm able to compound all my efforts in my high energy years, then I should be able to have the balance of my life open and free. So, a lot of people want an 8 hour of freedom post work. Actually, my brother-in-law said this, Brandon, I love you, but this is going to take us to a Christmas party. He came up and we were taking off somewhere. I think it was for Vegas. And luckily enough, I have a plane now, right? So you can go where we want, when we want, how we want. And he's like, well, I guess if that's what you want, if you're willing to sacrifice every single day of your life and sacrifice family to do that, then more power to you. And I kind of bothered me, that's one of those jabs. It's like, look, my brother and I was my nephew, my son-in-law works for me, or I guess it was my my niece's husband. And I says, hey, just jump on the plane. It's empty. And if you have a couple buddies that want to head down with me, let's just go. And so he said, okay, cool. And then Caden goes, that's so freaking cool, right, Brandon? Like, we're just going to jump on his jet and we'll bounce out of here. And I'm like, yeah, it's fun. And it's fun. He's 25, so you can see these goals here. Yeah. And that's when he made the comment kind of as a jab. If that's what you want, if you want to be like Jeremy and slave away and work every single day of your life, which is a false. Like, I do take good vacations, but I thought to myself, I said, hey, Brandon, I can appreciate where you're coming from, and you make really good money, and I respect that as well. And my sister's thrilled, and I couldn't ask for a better brother-in-law. However, what I can say is that at this current position in my life, I could unplug my work, and I don't have to work, and my kids don't have to work, and more than likely their kids don't have to work anymore. And you still have to keep going forever. And now I have 30 years of 24 hours a day. So you take those extra 3 or 4 to 8 hours a day that I've put in over the weekends that you haven't been able to sacrifice, and see if that adds up to the total compounding value of 30 times 20, 30 times 365 times 24. And I can assure you that because of Dave Ramsey's compound interest theory, time is the same thing. If you're willing to put it all in, like right now, while you have the energy, you can free up the back. And I look at it like I'd rather have my healthy years when I'm retired to be able to hang out with my grandkids and all this stuff freely and entertain them and have all the fun that I want to have without limitations to having to push a buggy at Walmart to maintain insurance.
Yeah.
When I'm 70,
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, is a lot of the work-life balance people. I mean, they don't, I really believe in work-life integration where, there's times I'm still taking a vacation. When we take trips, like there might be a morning that I'll get up early because I still got to cram out some work, right? But then when I put it away when I'm on that trip, the rest of the day, I'm putting it away. And so I just try to be 110% present in the moment in whatever it is that I'm doing in that moment.
I love that.
I don't try to, because I just, there's so many, I think the problem is like work-life balance really became this big thing over the last like 10 years. And I feel like it was a loser that kind of came up with it.
I feel like it is 100% some guy that made his money on TikTok or something.
And so I really think that you're able to, if you integrate everything in your life. I mean, for example, there's times I have my kids, I'll bring them out. We got 2,000 apartments out here in Wisconsin, and I'll bring them out for unit inspections. When I'm still going through and inspecting, I bring them with, right? And that's quality time that I still am spending with them. I'm somewhat teaching them the business along the way too. I have a 11-year-old and 11-month-old, and teaching.
Wow, that's a spread.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So and teaching her the business, right? And then after that, if she wants to go to Starbucks or go hang out, it's pretty easy to make a kid happy, right? We'll go do that too, right? But there's so many people that are like, no, I just don't want to do anything, or just, and so I think sometimes like the work-life balance thing, I think it just gets so twisted where I've never really thought about it your way, where it's like, okay, this is how I want more of my front end to be versus like my middle and back end then can be, more flexible. And ultimately that's the difference too, because if you can push and delay some of that, the quality of that balance part of the work life, of the life part, the quality of that life part is so much better than if you're going to try to take that up front where it's 8, 8, and 8 now, right? Because the 8 that you're just going to have for fun now is way different if you don't have the resources, aka money and time, the money and the time
versus whatever you have on the back.
Yeah,
right?
the money and the time, right? 'Cause, I mean, to get to some of the best places in the world we might want a vacation, it might be a 14-hour plane ride. Well, if you're tight on time already, right now, it's hard to, even if you got some balance, you're not going to be able to get that quality in that life. So
it's 100% agree. And I think, one of my guys texted me on Facebook message a picture of the book 4-Hour Work Week. And I'm like, well, throw that shit away because that's no good. Like, you don't even want to read that book. I've never read it. So bless your heart if you're the one that wrote it. Just the title is off-putting to me because I'm having to fight it as the employer of like, dude, like I want work-life balance. So I'm like, man, don't even go to the 4-Hour Work Week because then it's a constant uphill struggle to try to keep people motivated. And they're like, hey, can we do work from home? I'm like, no, dude, you work in a factory. You can't work from home unless you have like a welder or if you have a CNC machine. So it's just one of those deals that it makes it really difficult on employers. And not that the intent is to be an employee and have a 4-Hour Work Week, I understand. But at the same time, even as you can attest that as a self-employed individual, 4-hour work weeks are more than likely unreasonable and unrealistic. And I think we set up these false expectations to these, employees currently that are wanting to become an entrepreneur to where they can have just massive amounts of passive income instead of front loading all your time into the startup phase. One of those, going back to the interview process, when you bring up that work-life balance, then you ask those same people that they want 20 acres and 100 horses or whatever, and then, of course, a Ferrari, then they say, and I work 20 hours a week, and I do this, and I'm like, okay, well, let's see what it looks like. And then they'll go in. I'm like, when is that 20-hour work week? Well, I'd love to do it from here and like do a hybrid shift. And I'm like, okay, well, we're not even in alignment, dude. You showed up in a Toyota Corolla and you live in an apartment. Like we're not going to get you there on 20 hours a week. So at least we can check it. And then the other side of that is saying, hey, look, the next question is, what does it take to be a millionaire in your eyes? And do you want to be one? Some of them don't, and good for them. But most of them do, especially in the sales roles, right? Like, do you want to make $1 million this year? Of course you do. This job's going to be hard. So if you take 30 years at 8 hours a day, it's equal to 62,400 hours, roughly.
Say that again. If you take 30 what?
30 years at 8 hours a day with 220 working days, it's equal to 62,400 working hours.
Yes.
So I ran this math. I'm a math guy. I just love numbers. It has to make sense mathematically, data-wise. I ignore a lot of other dirty data like the details other than the math. I can do the numbers. The devil's in the details. I don't go over there. I let other people read that kind of stuff. So I'm like, okay, so 62,400 hours. That means if I did 17 hours a day, 7 days a week for 10 years, I can get my 62,400 in. And if I made $50 an hour for 30 years, or 50,000 a year, for 30 years, that's $1.5 million. But more than likely, if I only make $50 a year for 30 years, $50,000 a year for 30 years, then I won't have any money on the tail because that's what it's going to cost me to live. However, if I do those 62,400 hours and I know I can do 17 hours a day for 7 days a week, that's easy. I can do that. Then I can live on 50,000 a year and spend 500, and in 10 years I'll have $1 million.
100%. Yeah, I think about it. I think about it this way too all the time. I think about how. So I'm 35, and I just look back at the hours that I put in since I was 21, 22 years old, and what people look at. Again, you get the people that ask those questions and don't do anything or whatever, or you do get the people that even if they do it or whatever, they're going to ask the question. And what I try to put, when I try to put it into context, I'm like, look, what I've crammed in the last 13 years, basically at my craft puts me at like a 72-year-old that's still working full time. Yep. Full time, 40 hours a week. Like that's where I don't remember the exact age, but it's in the late 60s, early 70s.
And I believe you 100%. Because if you have 2,000, I believe you 100%.
Yeah.
If you have 2,000 apartments, there's no shortcutting this crap. And that's what I wish people would get off the Instagram, get rich, faceless YouTube channels and be a millionaire tomorrow. Yeah. Like, that's not real. And there's so much difficulty, especially when you have to digest the fact it's not. And then you're like, wait a second, I really have to work. but I want what you have. And I'm like, well, if you want what I have, then do what I do. It's not, we're not brain surgeons. I mean, I'm sure you're smarter, you're young, you're super aggressive, but at the same time, we have these skill sets that most people aren't, that they don't. And the skill set is true discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Right, with targets, even though we can't define it in what does that look like necessarily, we do have a grand vision of what we think about.
Yep, 100%. So another thing that I've especially in the last like 6 to 12, 18 months, I've really been interested when I talk to other people that have started businesses, and with you, starting, I think you said 5, 8-digit, businesses, 8-figure companies. What's your mindset when it comes to these companies? And, have you sold companies? Have you sold those companies? Do you hold all of them still? And do you see yourself ever selling, or do you see yourself holding for long term? And the only reason I want to ask that is because I've started to underwrite some of my real estate deals. We just bought like another little 64 unit behind this office back here, and I underwrote it for 30 years. So just because, again, I like the numbers too, and just like I'll play, you play the what if game a little bit and whatnot, but you do that, and it's astounding, like what that compounds and turns into, and so what's your viewpoint on that?
So I'll share the details. So there's 2 companies I got to 8 figures. One was the shed company. The other one was a home construction excavation company that went bankrupt in 2009. When the banks went bankrupt on me. We were doing major underground and major development at the time. So I had track hoes, excavators, skid steers, minis, 11 dump trucks. We were doing roughly $30 million a year. And then I had 2 of my biggest lenders, not my lenders, but the people we were working for. There was 2 big banks in our area that were loaning on most of the construction projects. They got shut down by the FDIC, and we just got the middle finger. The banks got bailed out, but the subcontractors didn't. And of course, the development side on development is the major bag holder of all the money. Yeah. And so that one cleaned my house. We were able to get through a few of the subdivisions and pay them down. But that's a long story to that. Needless to say, the Caterpillar Finance came in and made a deal that if I was willing to take all my paid off equipment and collateralize the equipment that had debt, like extra collateral, they'd give me 0% interest for 6 months and let me have a pause on payments while things got righted. Needless to say, that didn't turn around in 6 months. And they showed up literally 30 days after my first late, and they picked up every single piece of equipment I held, which then drove me, I can't dig myself out of the proverbial hole without a tractor, if that makes sense. Like I don't have a shovel. Yeah. How do you want me to dig out of this proverbial hole? And so that was one. Then after that, I built a ladder company. It's called Murphy Ladder. Which is the fastest product ever rolled onto Home Depot shelves from concept to product into every single store distribution. So we got full store distribution from a 3D concept ladder into full store rollout in 9 months. Keep in mind, I had to get OSHA, ANSI, manufacture in Suzhou, China, packaging, QPs, base sets all designed inside that figures, as well as getting the ladder diagram layouts and rollout for that inside all that time frame, while I never even had a manufacturer yet in China. So you had to build relationships, get the finance. Then Trump stepped in with tariffs on the first front tariff piece to China. And then we had to get insured as a non-ladder manufacturer, trying to get insured on the most deadly product on the market, was all rides. So that one went up. Our first year's revenue was roughly $15 million. So we crushed right out the gate with that one. The other one's software group. I have a company called Pure Brand, which helps businesses of all sizes introduce their existing customers to future customers. And that's really our secret sauce, how we built such a big business without salesmen. So the idea and principle behind that, and I don't know if that was your question, but I'm just flowing, so I apologize if I questioning what your initial question was.
No, you're fine.
Regardless, Pure Brand, the idea there was, being a firefighter and a small business, the idea of why we want big boxes to be our client is so we can use their store for showrooms, use their associates as salesmen, and use their customer base as our customer base to minimize marketing. We have one customer, they have 100 million. And then unfortunately, it takes a 42 to 50% product discount to get that product to be living inside their showroom floor. For example, what we call the shelf, right? So it's to sit it on the shelf, it hits those vendors a lot. So I thought, well, what if we could create an avenue or a pathway where companies could basically create a showroom from every single product they sell. And then those customers that like their product or are willing to share their time and their opinion, they'd be willing to take like a Zoom style call from our client and talk to them, and we give them a little bit of the money rather than give it to Home Depot, and they can answer questions, being the customer service, the salesman, and the showroom, so they can
That's
show the
interesting.
product. So we created this system that does it, and it's available on Shopify under their app store called Pure Brand, like I said. But now, even more importantly, how do we take action on the comments that are made from our past customers, like there's a problem with the product, or how do we take action on maybe their website's missing information? Well, we take that video feed, and it now becomes like user-generated content. We scrub that video and we transcribe it. We put a sentiment score to that conversation, and then we do look at the pros and cons from each person, the past customer and the future customer, and then we send out an action plan on what the company should do to repair those sentiments. And more importantly, then, when the host, whether you're paying them in store credits or actual cash, they put their app on their phone. Well, when that app comes in, it downloads their contact, or we pull out their contact list like Venmo, and we put it inside the store's customer lead, basically. And so when any of the the store's customers' contacts reach out to look at their products, they say, hey, by the way, Jeremy has a Murphy door. You might want to talk to him about it. So we introduce them into their contact list of people that have those existing products as a backside benefit. But it's way deeper than that.
Yeah.
It does a whole bunch of stuff. So that one has skyrocketed in values, and it's been crazy for us.
So long term with these companies, obviously the one that went under, it sounds like you still have the full.
I had two
went under. Okay.
under. So the excavation company, and then the other side is I have a commercial real estate brand. Right now we're holding about $37 million in commercial real estate. I have a hotel project that is in Manila that we're building. It's about $105 million. And then I just acquired another piece in Kentucky that is 180,000 square feet. That's worth about $42 million. And then I just am buying one in Michigan, as a matter of fact, right now, that's about 121 million.
Is this like industrial or what warehouse?
Yeah, industrial, flex, commercial, that kind of stuff. So, but they're large footprints. The one in Michigan's like 50 acres and 430,000 square feet. But again, it doesn't take magic, and I think that's where where we got lost in the translation with all these people on the floor, these kids that don't think they can do it. So when my first building came in, and I don't know how you buy as many units as you did, that's amazing, but I'd never bought a commercial asset. So in 2018, 2019, the opportunity came about to buy my first real estate piece, and it was $2.9 million, 90,000 square feet on 5.5 acres with a rail spur. And I'm like, well, that's awesome. The realtor's like, dude, you need to buy it. That's exactly what you need. Buy it. I'm like, dude, I haven't bought anything over 300 grand in my life, and to have another zero on this is freaking me out. He goes, dude, it's the best still going. This thing's worth a fortune. Just sign the document. We'll figure out the money. I'm like, okay, how much do you need down? He said 30,000, which was about 34,000 more than I had. So I figured out the 30,000, got him his earnest money, which was just to do like the appraisal and the ALTA and the environmental, right?
Yeah.
Which I didn't know what that meant either. I knew appraisal, but the other stuff I had no idea. So needless to say, get it all said and done, I got home and I started watching Grant Cardone. I didn't know Grant at the time. We've become pretty good friends now, but I'm watching Grant Cardone, and he's like using this model inside the multifamily world of where he's using rents to get DSRs and get valuations of properties. Well, this building was empty. And I thought, hey, when we do this contract, I'm going to ask them if they do, like, if they'll give me a 120-day LOI, because I'm doing a small business loan. I'm going to do an SBA. And so I'm going to need some extra time here. And it was when it was pretty busy. So I'm like, I'll need a little bit of time. They were telling me 120 days for my SBA. So I got that. Then I asked permission for them to have like a for lease sign while I'm trying to be under LOI. And I've never had anybody say no, by the way. Yep. So they put it up for lease. But the very next day, I ended up getting a huge section of this property leased. This property was only for sale. It was not for lease. So when the lease option came up, I started getting calls right away to get it occupied. So before closing, well before closing, I had the property fully leased minus what I needed. So I ended up going to the bank with a whole different approach, showing them my lease revenue potential. And fortunately, one of them was Union Pacific Railroad. So national credited account, and then another one was another multi-$100 million account here in Utah. And they're like, "Oh yeah, this is great." Well, that pivoted the appraisal to $16 million.
Yep.
From a $2.9 million purchase.
Yeah.
And so, by the way, we got that all closed under SBA, which I did the wrong one. And then I pivoted immediately into a DSR. And then I pulled and I paid the penalty, right? Yeah. And then I pulled $2 million and change out at closing, which was tax-free, which is another one of Grant's deals. I'm like, what the hell? Now that property's worth $17.8 million. Excuse me, that was worth 12.5. I said 16. That was worth 12.5 then. Now it's worth 17.8. I bought this building that we're in. It's another 100,000 square feet. There's 4 buildings here on 5.5 acres off the freeway. Paid 2.4, exact same thing. National call center, big group. They got bought by a group out of Switzerland. We got it fully occupied. More than half the property is occupied by the Air Force. So you know how those leases are. They're really powerful and high-end leases. So we paid 2.4, put $1 million in repairs, and now this property is worth about 16.5.
Yeah, it's the arbitrage in real estate's crazy when you know what you're doing and you can find a fix for everything. We bought this portfolio. One of my favorite stories. We bought this portfolio in 2021, and this guy that we bought it from was adamant about closing before Joe Biden got into office. So we closed the night before inauguration. And so it's 218 units, but there's a 78 unit townhome site, 76 unit townhome site, like all attached garage type, private entrance, no common areas. And then there was 32 duplexes. So 64 units there. So it was total 218 units for $33 million. And this deal was listed on just the regular MLS, which was kind of a mistake a little bit, but I had even seen it for a while and it sat for a while. And when I just looked at it from a high level, I'm like, the math just doesn't work for this area, just because I know my market and whatnot. But then I'm like, one day I was bored. I'm like, all right, let me pick apart this thing, and the individual parts were greater than the sum of how they were bulking it all together. Because when I started to look at comps of just duplexes, which I don't usually mess around with smaller units, they're usually larger properties that we buy. When I started to mess around with that, I realized, okay, I can pick this off for $33 million. The next day after that, if I decide to start selling off these individual duplexes individually at full retail price, I got like $40 million
overnight
portfolio here. Yeah, overnight. So it's a $7 million spread overnight. What ended up happening is we've held that for, we sold the 78 unit, the 76 unit off last year. We're selling off the duplexes individually now. We've got like 10 of them left or something like that. But we're on pace for a total transaction of like $53 million, to sell the whole thing off. And so again, that's a $20 million.
It's crazy.
Yeah, surplus. Yeah, it's crazy.
And then
it's nuts.
What people don't understand, this is probably working with my firehouse guys. The interview before you was Business Insider, and they're like, what's it like to be a millionaire post firefighting? So that was the one that was right before. Hence my voice being a little bit shot. It's hard for them to understand because you'll ask them, hey, what did you pay for your house? I paid $300,000. And like, okay, and I just sold it. I made freaking 400 or whatever. I made $100,000. Well, how much money? What was the percentage did you make? And they're like 25%. I'm like, no. How much did you put down on the house? Well, I put 10% down, so $30,000. So you picked up $100,000. You make 300%. Mm-hmm. And they just can't digest it. And so when you look at the COC or mom, the cash on cash, the money on money, when you look at like this even that property there, all total out, I was 30 some odd thousand. And to create what's now 17.8 million.
Yep.
And I've been living honestly off DSRs, and the rent roll on that property is like $1 million.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yep.
I haven't really had to put much money in. And so when you keep playing the game, it's been amazing. I've made more net income off of the real estate transactions than I make in Murphy Door. Murphy Door is fun and has all the attention all over the globe, but it's not the like cash cow that real estate is, which by the way is so passive. I may spend an hour a week in it.
Yeah. No, it's phenomenal. So, and then I've got the employees in house, so we also do third party management. Which is a little bit heavier, but for us, we do a lot of value add stuff, and we really try to turn these assets around as quick as we can. So the 64 unit, for example, we just bought December 28th. We've already remodeled almost 65% of that property. We're like 4 or 5 months in, so the revenues are already like double on a monthly basis, double what they were. So we try to
your values,
and so then we try to control that process a little bit more so that we can have the speed to get through it and try to. I mean, our ultimate goal is to be able to have when we do pick off the bigger properties, like have the ability to, buy a 300 to 500 unit property and completely touch every unit, remodel all the stuff in 6 months. That's the ultimate goal we want to get to. And in my mind, if I own the management company and we can project manage all that stuff in house, it allows us to control it and, do that and see the upside. But yeah, if you're hands off too, there's a lot of great ways to so I'm a little bit more hands-on. Our company's a little bit more hands-on. And again, but the hardest part for us is finding the deal, then turning it around. Then once it's turned around, again, like you said, now it's the same.
Just passive.
Yeah.
To answer your question, no, I don't sell real estate ever.
So
I just let it appreciate and then recap it.
That's this. Yep. And that's when the stuff that I hold up without any other investors, that's what I do too. I have deals where we've got investors and whatnot as well. And I have like a private equity side, similar to what Grant does a little bit, just a lot more value add, where he's buying, like Class A stuff in Florida and stuff. We're buying more like Class C and Class B stuff in good locations in Wisconsin, then bumping it up a level. And I mean, we'll still buy stuff today that we find that the rents are between $800 and $1,000 a month, and we'll take them to $1,500 to $2,000 a month on the rehab.
Which is huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was just talking to Jared Glant, his president. I spent 45 minutes on actually between the calls of you and this.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this real estate piece. And I'm like, look, you guys like to buy 80 to 90% occupied in stage A. I talked to Dave Robards, their number one salesman this morning. He's like, dude, talk to me about this deal you just pulled in freaking Michigan. And so I went through it with him. He's like, you got to call me on these lifts, man. He's like, how are you putting these magics, or how are you doing this? I said, look, you guys are looking at 80% to 90% occupancy where the rents are pretty stable in Class A properties, and you're hoping for that slight little adjustment every year. And I'm not defaming Grant at all. The guy's brilliant, and he's made me more money as an individual than anyone else on the planet.
Yeah.
So full credit to Grant. It's just a lot more reserved and calculated methodology.
Yeah.
I'm a risk taker. Hell, I was firefighter, paramedic for a long time. I'm okay with risk. Probably to the point where I've been bankrupt twice. Just saying, you know what I mean? I'm okay with stuff. But at the same time, I'm like, look, he has these incremental gains. Well, when you can take the square footage of like 400,000 square feet and it has zero rent income, and you're getting the property basically handed over to you at the bank for an assumption fee. Like literally nothing, because you're not having to do appraisals or altas or engineer. Like they've already got it done from the previous borrower, and they're just saying, hey, here. And a lot of the time you can get an assumption fee waived. Mm-hmm. Like literally just here's take it. Yeah. You can have it. And you're walking into a property fully occupied worth $100+ million.
Yeah.
And I just do it. Are you willing to take the risk? So this one, the valuation that we got, and I'll just give you this one, is 6, is what we're buying it for.
Yeah.
The assumption we're taking is 6. So times 400,000 square feet by average rent in the area is $16 to $20 a square foot on gross, right? Gross lease. So gross means that all utilities are included, for those of you who don't know, and taxes and so forth. So just take that and say, let's say it nets out at 12. Yeah, it's $16 and say it nets out at 12. Well, 12 times 400,000, if you got it occupied, it was $4.8 million in rent. Mm-hmm. You divide that by a cap rate, which is, divide that by, let's call it 6.5%, so 0.065. You're going to pop your number at the $100 and some odd million value.
Well, the crazy thing is some people look at what you do and what I do as more risky. But in my mind, like you said, you go buy the building that's $100 million already, where you're going to incrementally increase rents. You can't force a ton of appreciation. I look at that as more risk, because you're more likely, you have more room to go down than you do to go up. Because you're already at the ceiling. Yep. Whereas like when we're buying, there's always like this
zero.
Yeah,
you can only go up.
When I'm buying between $40,000 and $75,000 a unit, sometimes we do buy $100,000 and $128,000 a door, whatever type stuff. But we're usually able to, again, within 4 to 8 months, double and triple those values because of the value add. And so, like for me, I view it, what we do is as less risky than, just because again we have a lot of upside, not much downside with how we get in. So
I guess it's all perspective, right? It's what's the lens we're using to view it from, and for them, I can see where I haven't looked at it from your lens actually. Yeah, that is really true. Like if they had something crazy happen, let's say they had a bed bug breakout, and half their people leave, Well, that's a huge downfall. Well, we've started our cost basis at $0 in income.
Yeah.
And then basically, to give you an example, that property, we have a pre-lease agreement of already 57,000 square feet, which then covers the whole cost basis and still
Right.
nets an operating. It does an NOI at the back end. It's not much. It's like $120,000 at the end of the deal. It covers all our costs to operate the whole property, pays all our payments on the whole property, and still nets us out a little bit.
It's the craziest. So I'm buying a deal. It's a smaller deal for us right now. It's $3.9 million. This was on the market. People passed on it. $3.9 million. There's 50 apartment units right now. There's there's on top of that, there's a house that's converted to a 3-bedroom. There's a single family home. There's a 20,000 square foot office space. On top of that, there's about 7 to 10 acres that could be developed at some point. So I'm sitting here looking at this. Okay, the first step is let's reposition these 50 apartments, right? But then going forward, like at some point there could be 200 units on this townhomes on this site. This could be a $25 million, $30 million deal
For 3.9 plus improvements.
Yeah. If we end up building it all out at some point. I mean, just even if we don't build it out, it's a $8 million, $9 million after we do the first initial phase of value add. I mean, and so again, how do I, and again, people passed on it. It was on the open. This one was actually I buy a lot of my stuff off market, but this was on the open market, and there's other people that passed on it or just even bid under what I bid. And I basically said, guys, what do you want? I'll get you whatever number you want. Cause I knew it wasn't, I mean, I kind of knew ballpark where they were looking at, and we were able to come to a deal. And I'm like, and they're happy because we're closing fast.
And they're going to be done.
Yeah. So
I think it comes back to the past. When you asked earlier on the conversation is like, what separates people? I think fear is a really big handicap. Everybody's afraid of losing, or they don't want to be embarrassed because they don't want to go bankrupt. Of course you don't. You want to live in your car. Of course you don't. But I can tell you this, I did for a year and I didn't die. And I learned a lot about myself, and I had the opportunity to go through the checklist of my mistakes, take a good inventory of where my headset was, and then realized all the things that I'd done that nobody else had done at my age. Like, you think about the people that have made 8-figure annual incomes in their 20s, early 20s, that wasn't social media based or actors. I mean, in manufacturing and big box retail, and it's super, super low. The number's probably incalculable. But at the same time, I'm like, man, that is pretty magic what I brought to the table, and I can do this again. So for the first 6 months, super suicidal and depressed. And then the next 6 months I became really proud of myself on what I tried. And then I appreciated the fact and the loss. So when we look at our people here, it's like fail fast and fail frequent. And we do the best we can to celebrate the failures. So that way, hopefully it conditions people to not be so upset with themselves when they do lose or they do fail at something or something does break. I really think it's important that people have faith that they're not going to lose their job because they make simple mistakes. And I hope that translates. I really like people to think of Murphy Door as a rung in their ladder. And I want people that work here that have the ability and desire to go out on their own to truly bring great things to the world. Of course, I want them to stay here forever, but that's not the best place for the right person. They should be out there changing the world around us and making everything better. And I'm hoping that if there's any influence we give to any of them is that they have belief that they can do it. 1, 2, that they're not hard on themselves when they make mistakes. 3, that they look forward to failing. And not making it so it's so punitive that they just lay down and don't get up tomorrow because they just feel depressed. It's just part of the game. And if you don't lose, you can't. If you don't try, you can't win. But in order to win, you have to try. And yes, of course, in trying, you have to lose too. There's going to be losses, and so it's unfortunate. But most of the people, I think, fall in fear. They just don't
100%.
dare get out. They
Yeah.
don't want to be teased.
And they can't look at, you need to be able to embrace risk and realize there's opportunity with risk, and some risk is a good thing. It's just, but how do you leverage yourself so that you're more likely? I mean, anything that comes across my desk, and I'm sure one way or another you do the same thing, but I'm always like, what's the absolute worst thing that could happen here? What's most likely to happen, and what's the absolute best thing that could happen? And when you weigh those things, like how unlikely the absolute worst thing that could happen is going to happen, how actually, like how likely and how the odds are really stacked to what's most likely going to happen. And then, like, when you again look at the odds of what's the best thing to happen, usually those two things far outweigh what's the worst thing that could actually happen. And a lot of times what the worst thing is, it isn't even really that bad. A lot of times.
Well, let's say even if you go bankrupt, it's not that bad. Is it bad? Yeah, you hurt some people, but sometimes bankruptcies aren't your fault. Like in my play, when the banks go bankrupt, you lose the freaking Lehman Brothers that are lending to all these bigger banks that are going on, the full waterfall effect. No matter how good of an operator you are, if you're caught in the wrong timing, you're going to get caught in the cycle.
Yeah.
And it's not a place where you should bring yourself to the point where you think you're the loser, or even if you make mistakes that drive yourself into bankruptcy. It's not that I'm trying to glamorize that either, by the way. I'm just saying that you're not going to lose your birthday. You're going to wake up tomorrow. The beauty of that is the United States government set that up so people just that were willing to try would keep trying. Is there a reset period? Sure. Of course there is. Just like if you're late on your credit card payment, it's going to take you a while to get your credit restored and get it right. But at the same time, I think we miss out on a lot of opportunities in the fear of worst case scenario. To your point, the likelihood of the worst case scenario occurring is highly unlikely. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh. And what you said about celebrating fear, I mean, it's like with my 11-month-old. I mean, he's starting to walk, right? So anytime he falls, I'm not like trying to baby. I'm just like clapping right away. He doesn't.
For you.
He hardly cries, because he's just like, oh, that's supposed to happen. You pick him and then you say 1, 2, 3, and he kind of grabs my fingers and he kind of jumps back up again, and he's just ready to rock and roll again. And same thing. I coach my daughter's U11 team, and if they take a ball to the face, it's like, hey, that happens. It's all right. Let's go. And eventually they're not scared of the ball anymore because they've felt it. And they're like, yeah, it hurts, but it's like I know I'm going to be all right.
And maybe that's why that second time through bankruptcy wasn't near as brutal. It honestly did not even cost me a night's sleep. It's like, this is nothing compared to the first time where you had to digest your first loss and the embarrassment and the humiliation when you're in your early 20s and everybody's like, oh, he's rich and he's making all this money at early age. Yeah. And then all of a sudden now you're living in a piece of junk car. Yeah. It's like that was humiliation to the next level. And then losing was another level. But when I was older, I'm like, man, I look back through the inventory and how I could have mitigated those risks. Was there ways? Yes. And the result became Murphy Door on how we structured, how we do accounts, who we take accounts from. 92% of all our customers are paid up front here. When you place an order, you pay 100% on the day you order. And it's, you can't, with, delivering all over the world, you can't follow all the lien laws. You can't keep track of every county's rules. So a lot of its limitations to our ability to keep track of everything or desire to lean every project. Yeah. So we just do it our own way. But I look forward to these young entrepreneurs just getting it. I mean, honestly, there is so much opportunity. There is so much money flowing. There is so many things that people can really set themselves up for true lives of success. Does it take a long time? Yep. Do you have sleepless nights and a lot of work? Yep, more than likely, unless you're the one lucky guy that doesn't, that's on YouTube that makes it overnight. But remember, there's, what is there? I don't know how many years, thousands and thousands of years of data, and only a couple people that have made that deal. So you're probably not going to be one of those people. Yeah. But ultimately, you don't have to be super smart. You just have to have the right dream. You have to have the motivation to do it. And then you have to stay disciplined in your action. That's truly, I think it's that simple, even though that's not easy.
It's, right? The basics. I mean, it's the stuff it's kind of what people don't want to hear, but it's the same thing that every successful person that comes on this podcast, it's like, it ends up being the same shit. Always and forever. Always and forever. It's the same shit. It's just like, who actually wants to go do it, And so you said you would never, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time.
No, but, you're welcome to take up, you've got my time. So
okay. You said that you never would sell a piece of real, you don't have any intention, you don't want to sell any real estate. What about your other businesses?
So
you plan on holding those forever or selling those at some point?
No, I plan on selling all of them. And it's not because I don't want to keep them. So I planned out the gate when that book Built to Sell, right? I think that was kind of an eye opener. That happened post my excavation company. I thought, well, you know what? If I built my business to sell, then the structure of the business will be in such a place that anybody could come over and take it over. So I build the products and the businesses to be able to have the opportunity to exit at any given time. So we do audited financials. We have executive team management in the right places. Now, Murphy Door is big enough that it can, but even at the early stage, we empowered people, even when there was 2 or 3 of us, with certain rights and permissions. Even though I owned it all, I said, hey, Curtis, you can give refunds up to this much. You can give discounts up to this much. Like, we tried to push through this empowerment piece because I was still on duty at the fire station. He was on an opposite shift. So I let him take some realms, and then we delegated responsibilities, as well as building out kind of the wireframe of our SOPs and SOGs, so standard operating procedures and standard operating guidelines, using fire terminology because that's what we understood at the time. And we tried to integrate it that way, so that way at any point, if one of us got hurt, the next person, someone could move in and take our role. So every day we look at how it, would it look like to exit. It's not that I would actively sell. But how I would absolutely actively look at every offer. So we get a lot of strategic partners, private equity groups coming in, kicking the tires, and we do take every meeting. We let them come in, go through our financials and say X, Y, and Z, so we know what they're looking for. They beat you up and they give you these offers, and at least now that gives us the ability to and transparency to see their mindset and what we need to work on as a business owner to make sure that we, make that structure more rigid to pass their sniff tests. They'll always find something because they're trying to get a deal. But at the same time, if you do enough of those exercises, your business will be more prepared for that opportunity if and when you desire to exit. So my kids are all under the belief that I am going to sell. If it's spinning off cash, why? I mean, it depends on, the next difficult piece is where do you move that much money and have that same type of return? So those are kind of the questions that you have to ask yourself, And Murphy Door gives me so much cool access. I mean, we've had everybody in my office, like
That's
tomorrow's Trip Taylor that did Nitro Circus and Jackass. Next Thursday, I have Damon John in my office from Shark Tank.
Yeah.
Previous week with the Post Malone team.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's like we get the craziest. It is just so weird to get calls from the people we get calls from, and then you end up going to their house and on vacations, and you're like, how did I freaking end up here all over like secret rooms? It's the weirdest world I live in.
That's
I'll
awesome.
tell you what, it's odd.
That's awesome.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's a hard one to want to sell, to be honest with you.
How old are your kids?
I have 14, 17, 22, and 26.
Okay. Gotcha.
And they, one of them's involved in the business. One of them absolutely doesn't want to be in the business because she wants to be a dancer or something. And the 14-year-old said she's going to be the CEO. So good for her.
So did you do anything intentional with your kids to help them learn about money, business, anything? Or did you just kind of...
Yeah. So early on, we bought the Ramsey for kids. And so they do the envelope game, like here's 50% for long-term savings, 25% for short-term savings, 10% they have to give away, and 15% for immediate spend. So soda pops and that. So we got them all 4 clear envelopes early on, and they did the Dave Ramsey exercises. And it's not that I believe in debt differently than Dave believes in debt.
Yep.
I think there's ways to leverage that, as we probably already discussed. However, I wanted the kids to understand what that means. Like 50% is your house payment, 25% your car payment and utilities, and 15% is going to be your groceries, and 10% you're going to give to no matter what. Like, that isn't an option. We always give 10% to whatever cause you find important, whether it be your religion, whether it be to a whatever, right? So you got to give 10% of your money away. And honestly, it's been a really game changer for them. My son, his truck's paid off, his card paid off, his RV's paid off. He still lives at home because he's a full-time student and full-time employee. And he has no debt, and I think he's sitting with like $30,000 in the bank.
That's sweet.
And he has everything that he wants. But he is so disciplined. He saves 50% still, and he does 25% for his other savings, and he lives on 25%.
It's awesome.
So, and he's 22. He's got a girlfriend, but he is frugal minds are like, 2 nights ago, I look at him in the kitchen. I'm like, the hell are you wearing, bro? He goes, what? I go, your pants are 8 inches too short, and your shoes are like 3 years too old. Why? He's like, dude, well, they're perfectly good. I'm like, they look ridiculous.
That's
Why?
awesome.
Like, well, I don't need them. I'm like, and I love and I appreciate that, but they're such misers. My daughter, to give you the next story following, my one daughter, the 17-year-old, got a Bengal for her birthday, a cat. Right, the cat Bengal. And it was like, I don't know, $700-800 or something. That was her birthday present. It ran away a month ago. And it was sad because this poor daughter of mine, every single animal she's ever got has either run away or got killed by a car. So poor thing, she keeps losing. And so we made an agreement. It's like, look, Presley, we're okay, with you buying a cat. You got to pay half. I'll pay half because I feel like it's partially our fault for leaving the back door open. We live in farm country, right? So Morgan County's kind of up by Park City, Snow Basin Ski Resort, and it's just mountains and mountain lions and hawks and eagles. So more than likely we got a flying cat out of the deal. But so my 14-year-old's listening to the story. She has a stray cat, like this cat that's just 18, Heinz 57s. So her cat gets pregnant by another stray cat, and she has kittens, and she's like, Dad, I want to sell my cats for $20 or something. I'm like, no, dude, you're giving the cats away. I'm not going to have 6 or 8 cats sitting in my house. You're going to give them away. So I refused. It was actually 5 cats because she goes, not even $10. I said, no, just give the stupid cats away because I don't want cats. Well, as we're driving home from dinner, she goes, Dad, this is bull crap. Because Presley's cat, those cats go from $900 to $2,000. And you're going to go half in. And my cat, you wouldn't even let me sell my 5 kittens for $10. And then you had to have my cat fixed. And she goes, you owe me $50. and so you would think that that's a weird conversation. However, she got so emotional about how she felt shorted of the $50 when this girl paints rocks and sells them on the side of the road. She sweeps everybody's yard. She goes and mows their lawns. She is a hustler to the point now she currently has over $20,000 in savings at 14.
That's awesome. That's
but
awesome.
She works every single day of the summer.
Yeah.
And she is a ripoff. Like it's $20 a rock kind of ripoff.
Yeah.
With a smiley face.
Yeah.
But she has this cute little face and every car's driving by like, oh, $20. Good Lord. Like they'll say, how much is, or I want that rock. Okay, here, how much? $20. You already got the rock. I'm like, Annie. But anyway, they've really built up this desire to at least learn how to manage money better than I did.
So starting, I didn't know about the Dave Ramsey thing. That's a great idea. My daughter, any money she gets, we started this when, 7 years ago, whatever, 50%, it doesn't matter if it's birthday money, doesn't matter what it is, 50% of what she gets got to go away for future investment. 50% she can spend or do whatever she wants with. And so it's to the point now where, she's got like $800 saved up in the investment statement. She's like getting pissed at me because we haven't bought a deal since December. Because she's like, look, I need to put this $800 to work. When are we buying the next deal? I'm like, well, we got one coming. We got a good one coming up here. So it's cool to see them at a young age understand money.
You have your daughters participate in your investment portfolios.
Yeah. So
awesome.
They're in there. Yeah. Yep. They're in.
I haven't done that yet. I probably should because I look at my girls. They've got some money. Tayden's got some money, and I'm sure that they should. And you
just use it as another learning. And I always tell, I'll tell Crew the same thing when he's older and whatnot. And this is what I already tell Bren is like, look, if you gotta at least, I don't care if you don't want to do this stuff when you're older, that's fine. But you got to at least understand because, again, at some point this can be yours, but you got to at least understand how it works. Because I think once you understand how it works and you see all that stuff, you're not going to be, you're not going to necessarily be screwed over. You're not going to necessarily maybe take it for granted because you're seeing everything that's kind of going on here from an early age.
And then not only that, if they have skin in the game, they're more interested. They're going to ask questions that they normally wouldn't ask.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a good thing for like listeners. If you don't know how to do it, a good way to do is get involved with people that are actively involved where you can learn slowly. Trust them. Again, it's hard. I'm going to use Grant again, but like this accredited investor crap and the non-accredited, I think is ridiculous. Like we can gamble, but we can't invest in what we choose.
It is
based on accredited or non-accredited, which isn't hard to be accredited, by the way. But
it's another reason that your single family home is not really an asset because the single family home does not count towards the $1 million net worth that you need to be accredited. It's crazy.
It's the dumbest thing ever. But long story short, I think ultimately get involved. And I think a lot of people want what we're doing. They're just so nervous because there's not enough instructionals out there. And this isn't a pitch, but I thought, what would have changed my trajectory early? And so I put together a book like the 100 questions to ask yourself before going into business. Right. And then I have another one, the 100 questions to ask your partner before going into business together. And you both fill them out, right, to try to see. And there's no wrong answers. It's just basically remember, have you read the book QBQ?
No, I've never read that. I don't think I've heard
the
it.
Question.
No.
Is what it means. So it's basically saying, when someone asks you a question, generally it's laced with another underlying question. So they use a different form of the question, try to get to another level of a question. Yeah. And we do it all the time, not intentionally. We just
I can think about it right now. I do it. I for sure do it all the time.
100%. So the question inside the books are much laced like that. It's like, okay, here's the question that you should ask. Here's the question before that question that you're listening for. And these are the responses. And this is how you feel. It's not that your for example, what's your 5-year plan for the business? Do you want to sell? Do you want this to be a generational business, or what's your plan? Well, let's say I want a generational and you wanted to keep this forever. It doesn't mean that we can't be business partners, but it just means as we formulate the business that we have to come up with strategies of what the conversation should look like 5 years from now, which is much easier to do early than when we get to 5 years and you say, hey, bro, I want out.
Yeah.
I had a 5-year plan. I don't want generational. You do. I need something. So it's not that you don't need to, or you can't work with them. It's just we need to get those questions out of the way so you don't cause these explosive divorces that can happen.
So these are published books you have?
Not yet. They're getting close. So
got it. Okay, cool.
I'm going to put these in. There's a whole bunch, like 100 questions to ask your patent attorney, 100 questions to ask your banker. So I'm just been going through the things that were hard for me to learn over the last 30 years that I want to just kind of put out there. Like, here's the questions that you want to ask, and here's the answers and my lessons behind it. And then I put pro tips laced into it.
That's awesome. That's so great.
And it's not like it's a story.
Yeah.
It's truly just laced with, here's the pro tip behind this. Here's the difficulty. Ask these questions. These are the gotchas that I got and the questions I wished I would have asked. And unfortunately, I have a pretty broad career path, from fire to products at Depot and ladders and doors and sheds and housing and commercial construction, residential construction, hotels, commercial real estate, short-term rentals, and so forth. So, I mean, I've been able to do it in a realm that, and been able to successfully do it, I guess, in a larger number than some people get to. Not that I've been blown away by a ton of others, but at the same time, I think as we've navigated these waters, there's a whole bunch of questions that you wish you would have asked when you were going through the process, right? You're like, man, if I would have known that question to ask, my life would be different in certain aspects, or that deal would have turned out differently. So I just thought for me that would have shortened my curve. So we spent a lot of time doing that.
Yeah, it's a great concept, and that's a good. You have to keep us posted. I'll have to pick those up.
Absolutely, man. I'd love it, and hopefully it helps somebody. Again, it's never been anything I thought I'd want to do because I can't really spell. I mean, I can, but it's just not. So I didn't go in the storybook format.
And the spelling only gets worse because we rely on spell check and whatnot. And,
and ChatGPT and everything else is doing everything for us. So.
Yeah. Joel, any questions, comments that you have?
Those are coming out on audiobook too, right, Jeremy?
Yeah, they will be.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Just checking. I'm the same way. I audiobook everything. Just the attention span to read versus I've got an hour commute every day, 2 and then an hour back. I will audiobook all day long.
Right. And if I didn't put it in an audiobook, I'd never listen to my own book because I'm not reading it. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
Can't do that.
For sure.
So I'm excited for that to come out. Again, it wasn't a plug, but I'm hoping, my whole desire here is at this stage, you don't really need money. I mean, it's not like you're doing this to go wake up tomorrow and buy some bread. And that's not from an arrogant position. It's like, man, first off, I wish people understood how little money really means when you have it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the happiness level. It does not contribute to your level of happiness. Now, can you be happier with money? Sure. It does increase the elements of certain things you can do that you can't do. But I would argue that sometimes just going camping in a tent created greater family dynamics than going to the Maldives in one of those little bungalows that we just did.
Yeah.
Like that wasn't any greater, and it was probably a little worse because we didn't cook around the campfire and we didn't play stupid games not stupid games, but games that was family related. Instead, you had constant entertainment that was not, self-generated.
That's a great point. It's a great point.
We feel like money's all our answer. Like, I want this fancy car and I want these nice clothes or my Louis Vuitton bag or something. I'm a $19 Wrangler guy and free shirts, so I'm not quite in that same math, but I can see how people feel like there's some envious stuff when they see a nice boat or a truck or a car. But I wish they understood it's really not that. It's not what you think. And everybody I felt the same way when people said that. Like, yeah, it's easy for you to say when you're not worried about your power bill. It's just a different worry. It's not even a worry that I would say any less. There's heavy loads inside it, and it's not because, it's a pity party, you don't have to worry about your money. It's not that. It's just you're worried about 100 other people that work for you. and their money and their kids and their shoes and their payroll and their insurance, and are they mentally healthy? Do they have a substance issue? Like, you end up taking equity and ownership of everybody's emotional position.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a different kind of load. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because I want everyone to beat me. I'd love to see every single one of my employees have a much bigger portfolio than mine, a much healthier net worth than mine. And I would love to be at the bottom of the stands, clapping them on and watching them just crush me.
Absolutely.
That would be amazing to me.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I think would be the most, if I could define success, it would be that every single person that I had the opportunity to participate with absolutely blew my doors off.
Yeah.
Using my slight little instructions and directions along the way. So that way they could just be amazing.
It's the abundance mindset. That there's enough out there. Anyone that has it understands that there's enough out there for anyone to go get. And we all want to, we all want to see everyone go get what they want.
We do. And I just wish it's like, get off the couch, bro. It's like, it's right there.
Mm-hmm.
You are so, like, literally some of the people you talk to are so freaking smart.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing, bro?
Yeah.
If I only had half of what you had in your brain, like this life circle.
I'm like, my daughter comes, she'll bring homework home, and like this math homework these days, she's 6th grade. And I'm like, I'm about capped out. I was kind of capped out last year. I'm like, she's like, what? Are you serious? I'm like, yeah, I can't. Not much I can do. You're gonna have to go call your friend Eliana, because I can't. I don't know what that. I don't know what that is.
Me too. I didn't do that math.
Yeah.
My freaking high school student. I'm like,
right.
I never even got to that level of math in college. So I'm not that person that can do that. So it makes me feel really dumb. But
yeah.
I look forward to the opportunity to watch all these people progress. I love the fact there seems to be much more people engaged in the self improvement category, making it and having desire and drive than there has been in the most recent years. I feel like our current platform of taxation is going to be helpful. Even though I'm on two sides of a tariff line, like my ladder company's in China and my door side's in America. I do think this is helping. And I was at Mar-a-Lago a few weeks ago for a CEO work session on tariffs. And I was one of the only rooms that were pro. I'm like, look, man, you have to kind of destroy the system to rebuild it in the right way.
100%.
Otherwise, you're playing whack-a-mole. So I got a lot of hate from that, and I've had to do a lot of news interviews from that, which I understand. But, I mean, let's be honest. America consumes 27.5% of the world, consumption basis, right? We're 5% of the U.S. pop, or of the world pop.
Yeah.
And like ultimately we can go a couple weeks without our 19th pair of shoes, and then we don't need another 100-inch
well, that's
TV.
the thing is, you're already seeing, I mean, every day it's like there's more news coming out about the positive, the positive stuff starting to happen already. Let alone you give this thing another few months, 5 months, 6 months, whatever, a year. I'm totally on board with you. Totally on board with that.
And so where I was going is like, now I'm getting onshoring opportunities from China instead of the other way.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm getting manufacturers calling from China to onshore their products using our automated facilities. I mean, when it gets down and dirty, the opportunities for people if they looked a little bit in manufacturing is going to be a big play. But commodities are traded fairly close worldwide, same rate. So metals, woods, like on a commodity level, most of the things are traded worldwide. And the variable is usually the proximity to the commodity. And that's going to be the variable. Then after that is the labor input, right? So if you can go to a country that pays $400 a month versus a country that's paying $4,000 or $5,000 a month plus all the benefits and EPA regulations, then that's where the tilt advantage happens. Mm-hmm. So now the structure would look like, hey, well, look, we put highly automated facilities that can do a 10-to-1 output of their employees. Then we're really getting back onto a cost basis that's pretty level. Taking also into consideration the environmental imprint. And I'm not an environmentalist, heavens, I cut trees down for a living, right? But at the same time, there's ways to be really conscious about it. Like my wood comes from Oregon to our mill to your house. You have your product made in China, it goes from South Africa to China to the port of Shanghai to the port of Long Beach to the mill to us to the store to you, or from us to you. Like the footprint of that is insane when we really trim it down. So imagine if we can really build highly effective, highly efficient factories that are using a high level of automation. And then what that does to the consumer is it increases their selection of product. So the reason you can only choose 4 colors of that X that you're trying to buy is they're having to buy container loads of it. Well, if it's being made by your neighbor, now the dynamics is width, height, depth, color, material. You can choose all of it, right? So I believe with a little patience, We won't have to settle for just one of 4 selections. We now have a huge selection of opportunity, like a Nike customizable shoe, for example. You know how you can customize your Nike shoes all the way? Well, if you're doing that at a proximity level with the right automated facilities, you should be able to customize every single thing you want, right? And then if we can do it near you, then you can have what you want, where you want, when you want it. So what I challenge people looking at, you know, what are the opportunities out there, is to dig deep inside themselves and say, how can we make an impact in manufacturing X using smart manufacturing levels with automation and so forth that can then deliver anything that people want within their realm of, you know, proficiencies immediately.
So that's where you think this is going in the next few years, or what?
No, so I can tell you what Murphy Door's life cycle is currently. So Murphy Door is, I look at it as my lab. So Murphy Door has 300 to 400 million variables. So every single product I produce, 100% of them are custom one-off. We produce a product every 6 minutes, and every single one of those products are custom. So, and that's cycle times, right? They just coming off the line one every 6 minutes, and every one of them is different than the other.
It's crazy.
Right. So my thought is, if I can do that with doors, and then I can do that with beds, and I can do that with armoires, and I can do that with nightstands, and I can do that with tables, and I can do that with cabinets, and I can do that with X, Y, Z, right? Everything. Then the customer can go in and go say, hey, I want my master bedrooms this big. I need a bed this big and 2 nightstands, rather than saying, hey, I have to buy that one on the shelf. I like my nightstand at this height. I like my bed at this height. I want this wood. I want this color. I like those little, you know, metal pieces. I want that type of material. You could truly select it all. And with the systems that we're building, my goal for Murphy Lifestyle is that you can create anything you want inside our manufacturing component, like inside our component being wood, hardwoods, and so forth, that you can truly ultimately design every single piece of your furniture in your house customized at a price equivalent to, if not equal to, what you're currently paying at RC Willey or Ashley Furniture or wherever. But now it's being manufactured near you with exactly what you asked for and dropped off to your home within 300 radius miles. So the objective there is my goal is 2027 to have our products lead times for manufacturing be 3 days. So you order within 3 days, it leaves our plant and it arrives to your house in 7 days. By 2034, that's in our bed and door world. By 2030, that we'll be able to do that with every single type of product, from kitchen cabinets, armoires, nightstands, and so forth. So we've invested heavily into automated facilities inside our AI software, as well as our internal, what we call screen to machine software, where the customer's inputs are now creating and writing the design and manufacturing profile for our equipment. When they drop the order, it goes into our IntelliStore. The IntelliStore produces the purchase orders for all the materials that are delivered the next day. It then goes through the automated line and gets produced. So we're doing that with Murphy Door today, but now we're trying to increase the script where you can design it with your phone and drag and drop and stretch and measure immediate, and then have that file, you know, color it, drop this wood over there and drop that handle over here and do this and this and whatever it is you're looking for, and say, that's what I want, and then send it to our machines, and then it can produce it and have it out of our facility.
Yeah,
that's my long-term goal.
That's crazy. So is Murphy Lifestyle a business already, or is that something that's in the works?
No, that's just where we're headed, right?
Gotcha.
We've got a brand it's just sitting in the background. So as we talked about, the begin with the end in mind, my goal is to see that people don't have to settle for what's being in big box.
Yeah.
What's there. My goal would be that they create what they want.
So much crap.
It's all crap.
Yeah.
What if it's all made by your neighbor? Like, what if there was a way to integrate cabinet manufacturers around you, that we are the sales front engine, that they can design all the furniture, and as long as they're part of this group, we can drop the files to your facilities near you, and then they go and put it in. Like we're ultimately like an Amazon style, but instead of ordering inventory, we're ordering the work order. And working with, you know, licensed and guaranteed manufacturers. And I don't believe it has to end at like cabinets. Why should it end there? Why can't it be at clothing? Why can't it be at boots? Why can't it be that way? There should be a way that we can truly customize our life. Now, the unfortunate part, this is the sideline of the tariff conversation. If it's all being built overseas, you're not going to be able to have that SKU. You have to SKU. You have inventory limits. And by the way, you have 5 months of inventory before it even hits the door.
Yeah.
So what if you could do it all now and empower your neighbor and empower all your friends around them to deliver what you're looking for and hire your neighbor? Like that's really where my heart lives for Murphy Door. This is just my laboratory to figure out how I can do that for the world.
That's cool. That's sweet. Joel, any other thoughts or questions?
Wouldn't that be awesome for your multifamily, right?
Yeah, that'd be
like
awesome.
You go in your multifamily, I need kitchen cabinets.
Yeah.
I want this table.
Yeah.
This room's different than that one.
I mean, this is the thing is we've gotten our, we can, completely gut out a apartment and get it put back together in 3 days. We have the ability to do that, but it all comes down to making sure we have the product on hand. And so we'll order the first 30 apartments on this 54 unit that we're buying that I was telling you about before. They're picking up for 3.9 million. We'll have 30 units of all the materials and all the stuff that we need dropped off the day that we basically within the first couple days that we close that deal. We'll start working on the three or four that we're going to inherit that are vacant right out of the gate. But it's all there because as long as we have the labor in time, ready, and as long as we have all the product there, we can get these things done. But having the labor or getting all the things is there's a lead time to all this stuff, especially when you're doing it at scale. And you need, we got to the same point where, like you were talking about before, you're going to some store, they're asking, what are you doing with all this stuff? We go to every Menards and Home Depot within a 200. It got to the point where we were going to every Menards and Home Depot within like a 200 mile, trying to buy bifold doors and right and left swing door. Yeah, we're buying it all. They're like, dude, you're with Spalding. You guys just came and raided. We don't have any. You guys took everything we had, and they know who we are because of how much stuff that we're buying. And so we've had to alter our processes because of that, especially with we kind of have a little bit of a new model now where it's like just heavy value add and whatnot. And so but the product, it would be potentially a huge solution.
So imagine this, that you didn't have to buy 30 at a time. You literally buy it 3 days before every unit, which then increases your cash flow.
Right.
Because then your discipline of having to do that goes down.
Yep.
And then you just know that you just need to give us a 3-day lead time. We'll call it 7 with trucking, right?
Yep.
That you'd be coming out of Kentucky, or we're building a new plant up by you here shortly, up towards Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. So we're going Utah, Kentucky, Plano, Texas, Carlisle, Miami, then Wisconsin, then Boise. That's kind of our plant layout.
Yeah.
So imagine if that did that and everybody had the opportunity to do that. Yeah. And then it's just like right now you drop it and you'd say, hey, I want this width, this height, this depth, and this wood type with these handles. Boom. Yep. And you can cost seg that down and make it as cheap as you want or as expensive as you want because you're literally picking every material.
Yep.
And it's you're empowered to do it, and it's by color and core. Yeah. So what core do you want? Plywood or MDF?
100%.
Or particle board? Do you want this veneer or this? It's really you're completely empowered to do it, and you create your own lifestyle that you're looking for. So that's where my heart is, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So, I appreciate you a lot. It's great. What a fun conversation.
Yeah. No, it's great. And are you on Instagram and stuff like that? Or
I am. Yep.
Where
it's J Barker 482 on Instagram. Jeremy G Barker on all the other stuff. Yep.
Okay. Cool. Well, I'll check you out on there too, because we're not even linked up there or anything yet. So I'll do that.
Oh, geez, Louise, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not, like I said, Joel got in. I had to look into you a little bit, and I didn't know who you were or whatever. And I checked in. I'm like, man, this guy's doing a lot of different things. So I was excited to talk to you today, and I appreciate you taking the time too. We do. At the end of every podcast, the previous guest leaves a question for this guest, and then you'll answer that, and then you'll the next guest, you don't know who they are, but you'll leave a question for them. So Joel, what was that last question?
So I'm going to tweak it just a little bit for it to make a little bit more sense. So in this case, the question would be if you could only keep one property or business out of your portfolio, which one would you hold on to?
No doubt in my mind it'd be Murphy Door because it's the long-term picture of what I'm trying to create for the future. I would say that would be the keeper, even though it's got great potential and it's not necessarily the cash spinner over all the other properties that are coming out there. I would have to say Murphy Door for sure.
When you say it's not the cash spinner, what's ballpark margins, or what does that look like?
Oh, it's really big. So when I say it's not the cash spinner, it doesn't generate at you don't go from 2.9 to 17 million in a few years, with no effort. So what I mean by our input. So when I say it's not the cash spin, it's not by our input. Like Murphy Door has a lot more hours in it versus the real estate effort.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, but real estate, it's really going to kind of be self-inherent. It's going to do its own thing, and I can't really impact it outside of some improvements and better tenants, a couple little motions. But Murphy Door, I feel like there's a few little moves that could dynamically explode it, right? Once these pieces come together, it's a whole different realm. And then the expectations from big box and all the way down chain is significant. They're going to expect to have that ability to completely configure and customize everything, right? Customers are going to start to expect that and having the same experience as Amazon Prime, but with custom. And big box is going to struggle with that, right? So it's going to be hard. So I would say I would keep Murphy Door for that only reason, is because I know I can make a bigger impact to, I know it sounds really silly when I say to humanity, but to the ability for people to have the liberties of choice than what it would be to keep a piece of property.
Yeah. I mean, me and my wife though too, there's stuff that we'll look at and we're like, it's just like, just again, talking. So like to be able to completely customize your own stuff with whatever it is. I love that. I love that whole concept and idea. And I love that you're so passionate about it. It's awesome.
It is our goal. I have a whole mission book about it. Like we have a 400-page book on what this is. We platformed the whole thing. It's super important to me to have that ability for everyone. And I hope it doesn't stop at just, Murphy Door, Murphy Bed and cabinets and kitchens and whatever. I hope it truly carries across all products where people can start thinking about differently rather than forcing people to get what you offer, letting people choose what they want within a realm. Like we'll give design configuration concepts and let you edit, right? So it's not like you can do 1,000% of everything, but you can do a huge percentage of most, right? There's limitations like for your earphones. I look at those, I'm like, man, wouldn't that be cool if you could change bands and colors and make it exactly the way you want? And it's not like it would be hard. It's just they're ordering 20,000 of those at a time. And if they changed die sets, it would be difficult. So yeah, I would say Murphy Door would be the one I'd keep for sure.
That's awesome. What question you got for the next guest that we have on?
Well, that would be coming back to your first question, or not your first question, but one of your questions is, if they'd exited in the past, do they wish they would have not, or do they wish they would have kept it?
Yeah.
Right. Or if you are thinking about exiting, why?
Okay. Love it. That'll be a good question.
So, because that's a common question, right? Everybody wants to know, do you plan on selling? And that's literally a huge percentage of the emails I get is like, man, we want to come in and visit. We want to do an offer. And I'm like, yeah, we talked to them. But I believe my mission's more important than the money at this stage.
Yeah. So when you say, hey, we'll talk to them, is it because, again, you want to get what they're looking for to then prep it 100%. For later potentially? I mean, they're going to send you an offer and like if it's crazy, you maybe would accept it, or you just, I mean.
I've had some pretty crazy ones.
Yeah.
We've had 9-figure offers, some good 9-figure ones. But I would say that a lot of it is you also see trends.
Yes.
So if you can get them in here, you might have some key point indicators that are letting you see what may be coming down the pipeline, that they're looking at a lot of businesses as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes they drop little nuggets. So if you're able to bring them in and they've had the opportunity to dissect other companies that may not be in the same, may not be Murphy Door style stuff, but they can give you some nuggets that are important, or they can give you some key point indicators of what Depot's doing or Lowe's or what are the markets doing that you can't see unless someone's in someone else's back pocket. Yeah. So that's really what I look for is I try to play really dumb and I'm like, man, I don't know anything, dude. I just left fire. Like I know fire, paramedic stuff. So you're gonna have to go deeper and explain to me deeper about this. Yeah. And that trick worked most of the time. It's less, it doesn't work as good anymore, but I'd really try to ask more questions and try to understand what people are expecting, hoping for, and wanting. All those three things. What do you expect out of the business? What are you hoping for out of the business or in the future with product? And what's your end goal kind of thing? Yeah. I like to dig into that level.
Yeah. How far out of Salt Lake City are you?
20 minutes.
20 minutes? Okay. Yep. I got a couple other buddies out there. So I'll have to, I was out there last,
look at our plant.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. I was out there last summer. I was out there. So I'll keep you in mind and whatnot.
Yeah, there's a lot of different events that happen here. You'd have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Jeff Gardner, he owns Bucked Up. You ever heard of Bucked Up?
I was with his brother or his cousin yesterday.
Yeah. Okay.
John O'Gardner. I graduated with him. He owns, you know him. He's like Cerberus, the family, big, huge. Yeah. Yep, I know the Gardners really well.
Yeah, so I know Jeff pretty good and pretty well. Yeah. And
that's a big one. There's $1 billion player.
Yeah. He's a beast.
Yeah, he's a beast.
He's a great guy awesome. Too.
But his
we got
sister
to
does
get him.
my,
Joel, remind me. Yeah, I got to get him on the podcast. Yeah.
Yes, you
say
do.
that. Say it again, Jeremy. What?
His sister does my wife's nails and hair, and
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
it's literally
Yeah.
we went to the same high school,
Oh, cool.
so we all it's
It's a
I
small
have
world.
got one thing about our high school, dude, is it's everybody came from my high school.
That's
It
crazy.
is the craziest thing. Like people are like, "Wait, you went to high school together? Didn't you go to high school with that guy?" I'm like, "Yep."
That's
Didn't you go to
so-
I mean, our graduating class produced 3 billionaires already.
Oh, that's
Oh my
insane.
gosh.
Our
There's
graduating class.
3,500 of them in the world. Well, known billionaires. I mean, obviously, I think there's a lot
Right.
more billionaires that aren't, But I love
3.
that. It's so interesting because I love when you're watching like an NFL game or NBA game. They talk about like the guys they played with on the same team or came from the same high school at the same time, and it's just
And think about that. In one the same graduating class. I'm not talking about the high school, like graduated together.
yeah, it's
And
crazy.
then on top of that, there's a whole bunch on the cusp.
Yeah, that's
Like
awesome.
that are just making huge waves. I'm like,
Yeah,
my gosh. But yeah, the Gardners, and we all went to school in the same group. Jono dated my sister, and
yeah,
so it was fun.
yeah.
But we spent all day yesterday with him yesterday. I
Oh,
was
okay.
down at an investor relations meeting down in Sandy at Divvy's building. I guess
Cool.
it's Bill now.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome.
good group of family. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah, well, he's been wanting to like, take me on the helicopter, whatever he's doing. I'm like, man, yeah, I'm down. We gotta
Go.
get out there. I gotta get out there sometime. So
Take his
my wife and
helicopter,
I
fly
have
up
to
to
get
the
back out
Ogden
there.
Airport. And my office is on the Ogden Airport, so I'd literally walk across the one way to get in the plane and
There you
make some
go.
handy.
What do you
So-
have for a plane?
We have a PC-12, and then we have a CJ4 that'll be here in August.
Okay, awesome.
So a Cessna so the other Pilatus PC-12, which is a single engine prop, and then a CJ4, Cessna CJ4.
Yep.
So
Sweet.
we got a steal on that one. It was 450 hours on it.
Nice.
So had to bring it out of Europe, but August, and it can't be soon enough, man.
Yeah. Well, that's
So
what
when
I mean. That's what I charter every now and then and whatnot, and it's so that's one of my, because again it does come down to a time thing. I mean it's a time thing, and when you want and where you want, whenever you want,
You know
with
what's
who
nice
you want.
about Utah too, and I don't know if it's that way in Wisconsin, but there's a pretty good group of people that have a lot of money on this Wasatch Front. And so planes are always down, right? They got inspections, they got this. And so it's pretty funny. You just get on the phone like, bro, will you send me this? Can I use your PC-12? Or like, send me your freaking Pilatus. Or
Yeah.
what was it that we used? A PC-24 the other day, and then an Embraer 300. And he's like, man, my Embraer's down. Can I take your PC? I'm like, yeah, just jam it around. So it's like this constant shuttle.
Yeah.
And we literally run a little book.
Yeah.
And we keep track of like, you owe me 7 hours. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
here we're swapping hours on planes. And it's awesome because you can. And the people are so kind. It's just like, yeah, bro, absolutely. The other day, this is how silly this life gets sometimes, but we went to go to Cancun 2 weeks ago with my daughters, and my son couldn't go because he had finals. And we go to check in and load your passports. And my daughters are a 5-year passport. Both were expired like 2 months prior.
Yeah.
And I said, Shannon, I'm like, dude, our passports are expired. And we leave at 2:30 tomorrow. Right? And so the Pilatus was in for getting breaks. And I'm like, crap. So I'm like, we got to go to Denver because they do like 1 hour turnaround stuff at Denver, their office there. And it ended up being 3 hours. But I go, man, I need a plane here at like 6 o'clock. We can get to Denver, 7:30. Anyhow, I start texting everybody, and then by I ended up getting a hold of like Congressman Moore. I'm like, hey, can you get me an appointment first thing at the Denver passport office? I'm texting a bunch of dudes with planes, like, and then next thing you know, I had all these offers for planes to sit there. Like, where do you want to be picked up? Where do you need to go? So my girls are so spoiled there. I'm like, look, just get in here, and then we'll just jam to Denver. And then we'll come home, and then we'll get on our Delta flight because you don't want to take a private flight into Cancun. It's like $600 per person for their immigration paperwork.
Yeah.
And the landing fee is like $4,000.
Yeah.
It's more than I'm willing to spend for something that you can get on $1,000 ticket for first class, right?
Yeah.
So we go down there, we get it in, we get back in time to get to the Salt Lake City airport. My girls were like, oh, can't we just take this, Dad? I'm already sleeping. I'm like, no. We're not going to do this. Like, you get off your freaking high horse. But the community is so awesome that everybody was willing to kick their plane over. And they're like, oh, no, absolutely. Like it was some death-defying feat.
Yeah.
We may just be a day late to Cancun. You know what I mean? So it's a good community. I hope you have the same thing over there in Wisconsin.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Cool. Well,
so good to meet you,
Jeremy. Yeah, great to meet you too, man. Let's stay in touch. Joel, thanks for setting this thing up, and we'll talk to you soon. I don't know, just stay on after we end this. So
absolutely.
All right, appreciate you, Jeremy.